was also, of course, on always on the lookout for interesting products to commoditize on Tezos. And I realized, wow, that's a great fit actually, because people have been tokenizing a lot of commodities, but uranium is actually a hot, literally, commodity, and it's really underserved in terms of like access to it. So that felt like the right asset to target.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic and I'm joined today by Arthur Breitman, co-founder of Tezos. Arthur, thank you for joining me today. It is great to have you.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Majority of my subscribers, followers and viewers know my channel has a lot of uranium related content. Since I'm heavily personally invested in uranium, I have covered the industry from a lot of angles by bringing company CEOs, traders, market experts, analysts. But what I didn't cover so far, and which we will talk today, is uranium tokenization. Looking forward to discuss that. You are for the first time in my show, so please let's start with your origin story, your 2-minute background of your career, please.
Very good. So I grew up in France, hence the accent. And I studied math, physics, and computer science. I did a bit of competitive programming as well. Moved to the US in my early 20s, and I worked on Wall Street at a variety of small hedge funds and large banks. I was at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. I did a bunch of products. Mostly I was on the market making side as a quant. Worked on ETFs at Goldman Sachs, but also on commodities for a while. It was natural gas futures. So I did a bit of everything. I switched to robotics in 2016. I worked as a research engineer for Waymo. That was just for about a year and a half. And I had been working on Tezos since 2014. Started becoming very visible in 2017. Became huge. My wife joined me on a project. We helped the foundation raise a bunch of money for it. And I've been involved in trying to grow Tezos ever since. And for those who don't know, Tezos is a layer 1 blockchain. So it's out there. It's been live since 2018. It's UMEX transaction. It's a decentralized network, and it has a governance model which allows the holders of the token to actually decide how the chain can evolve and get better over time.
Great. Before we dive into the uranium tokenization world, I want to hear your take on the uranium big picture, the uranium supply-demand picture. How do you see that going forward?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not the foremost expert on uranium. Like the way I've done investments in my life in general, I'm a bit of a relative value person, but I'm also a bit of like, what do I think the average investors think in this space, and do I think they're insufficiently bullish or overly bullish? And I feel like if I have enough of an edge in these directions without being like a complete expert in each category, then with enough bets I will pay off. And that's how I've done, and I've done fairly well doing that. So I started getting really interested in the uranium trade around 2020. And the reason for that is I was looking at attitudes, opinion polls on attitudes to nuclear power in the United States by age group and by political affiliation. And so for the longest time, you've generally had more support for nuclear power among Republicans and Democrats in the US, and that remains true. But what you saw is that even among Democrats, there was an inversion between the older generation and younger generation. And I think it's because one is the risk of nuclear armament is more remote than it was during the Cold War, obviously. And the concerns for global warming have overtaken concerns for nuclear waste. And as a result, you saw this switch. And I've seen many times politics follow opinion switches. So when if you look at when the U.S. government, for example, starts introducing legislation around gay marriage, it's almost as almost at the point where the poll crossed 50%. So it's just kind of, and I'm saying well, if opinion on nuclear power change, because it's such a powerful technology, I think the governments can turn on a dime as soon as the opinion, and we're on the cusp of this. And then on top of that, so I started investing in uranium in 2021. And on top of that, we've had the war between Russia and Ukraine, which highlighted the dependency of Europe on imported gas. And then on top of that, we've also had now this expected energy demand from AI, which has massively increased. So there's all these forces which are converging on it. And so without being like a partly like big experts on like, which mine is going to open when, what's going to happen if like there's a flood in this mine in Kazakhstan, I can say like, I can see a lot of things happening, and I don't know that enough people have realized that.
Yeah, it's a different approach, and I totally understand that approach. But when did you first time have the idea to tokenize uranium? What got you interested in that in the first place?
I think it started from wanting to buy uranium myself, and I look at the options. And so in 2021, what I look, the best option was to buy, probably at the scale I was doing it, right, which is not buying 4 million clips, was to do this with the Sprott ETF. And I realized that there was some limitations on the Sprott ETF in terms of global accessibility, in terms of ability to track the spot price, because it's not really, you can't do creation and redemptions on this ETF. So sometimes it will trade at a big discount, or you can trade at a premium. So the tracking wasn't perfect, and it was, that was annoying. And it was also, of course, always on the lookout for interesting products to commoditize on Tezos. And I realized, wow, that's a great fit actually, because people have been tokenizing a lot of commodities. But uranium, it's actually a hot, literally, commodity, and it's really underserved in terms of like access to it. So that felt like the right asset to target.
Yeah, makes sense. What is the long-term, long-term vision, mission behind this uranium tokenization?
I think the goal is to go beyond uranium. One of the value of blockchains overall has been largely overhyped. Like a lot of people are selling snake oil out there. I always try to be realist about what the technology can do and what it should be able to do. But one thing I think is generally possible with these technologies is providing more people around the world with a lower friction way of accessing different financial assets. And doing it with commodities is particularly interesting because one is like, I think it's less served by traditional markets. And two, it also eases some of the regulatory friction that would come with other asset classes. So the goal is, let's go beyond uranium. There's a long tail of really interesting industrial metals, for example, that haven't been tokenized, and other commodities. Uranium was by far the most interesting one, but there's a few more I think we can expand on if we do the education work and the marketing work around the uranium product.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit deeper answer your take on what key innovations make this so unique. How does this impact liquidity, accessibility, and the market participation?
I don't think there's a silver bullet, right? Just putting it on a blockchain is not necessarily immediately going to give you liquidity. It's a whole. You have to take a holistic approach to this thing. So it's bringing the right participants. It's having the right custody solutions. It's having the right trading venues. It's all of that. And at the end of the day, having a blockchain underneath it plays not necessarily the biggest role, but it's an important role, right? It's not de minimis. It's not the biggest thing, isn't necessarily. So yeah, it's not. I would say it's not the key innovation that makes it all possible. It's part of it is the willingness to actually be building this product, but it does bring something. It definitely makes it faster to go to market. It makes it easier to distribute. So for instance, imagine that you want to have custodians to work with this product. There's already a lot of custodians around the world who can custody assets on blockchains. And if your asset is on a blockchain, then immediately it's very little work for these custodians to be able to custody the assets. So it's a form of interoperability that you get for free. Whereas if you are if you're doing a traditional ETF, for example, or a structure share, you're going to be on one exchange. Yes, people around the world could get a broker in that country. Maybe their broker in their country gives them access. Maybe they don't. There's a little bit of like streamlining that comes in. You have your wallets, you have your custodian. You just do it directly. There's a simplicity that comes with it.
Okay, what was it like launching uranium.io? You mentioned team. Who is the team, partners behind it?
Sure. So a lot of the lift was done by a team at Trilitech, which is a company in London that promotes Tezos adoption. And what Trilitech helped do is corral some partners together to make it happen. We've also been lucky to work with Curzon Uranium, and we've also been lucky to work with Archax. So Archax did the actual tokenization of the product. Archax is a FCA regulated entity, and so the technical side, I would say, was mostly handled by Trilitech. Also, some of the legal work was done at Trilitech. The tokenization side, bringing it to the market side, was done by Archax, and of course, lots of useful advice, consulting, and some liquidity from Curzon Uranium.
Sure. How long did it take from the idea to the execution?
It took too long, but really there's two phases to that project. I think that there was the idea in 2021. So, from that perspective, very long, but I think it wasn't sufficiently prioritized. It was always something we wanted to do, but it wasn't really moving. There was not like a clear project owner and so on and so forth. From the time where it was like, okay, we really need to make it happen. Like, let's make it happen now. That maybe took 6 months.
Okay. Would you say that were the biggest challenges you had in the process, the ones you mentioned right now, or there were some others as well?
I mean, those are not that interesting. Like, they're internal challenges. It's kind of like, hey, do we have the right staff? All of that. I think the more interesting part is the external challenges, because that's more repeatable. And one of the external challenge is that a lot of people will see something on a blockchain as a crypto product. And it's not a crypto product, but from the perspective of advertisers, like you have advertising rules. If you want to, advertise a product somewhere, they say like, oh, it's on a blockchain, it's a crypto product, and therefore you have to follow these rules. And they're like, well, it's not a crypto product. It's uranium, it's physical uranium. You get beneficial ownership in a piece of physical uranium. It just so happens to use the blockchain as a backend. But for a lot of people, if you're on a blockchain, you're a crypto product, and that's like getting past this barrier was and still is difficult. So there's a bit of market education to do here.
Yeah, there are probably some certain regulatory complexities in this. So how do you manage them? How do you manage regulatory complexities of handling a commodity on chain?
Well, good lawyering. That's one part. Having like smart lawyers who understand the product and who can also talk to the regulators and who can talk to the different parties in place.
What lessons were learned in bridging traditional finance, commodities, and blockchain technology?
That's a good question. I would say, we learned quite a bit about like how to do it. It's just like very practical lessons. Like what setup works. Like we looked at different potential setups, evaluated different things, talked to different parties. So now I think we found a structure that works fairly well for doing it, and that can be reproduced. So the goal is after establishing enough of a uranium market, let's try to do it with more metals. Let's try to do it with more commodities. But I don't know that there's like one big lesson. I think it's more also like institutional knowledge. It's like this is something we learn how to do and like how the people to do it. And it could be like very simple things such as like what type of market makers can access a market like this? How do you set it up on chain? How do you perform market monitoring functions? All of that.
Sure. What about peers? Who do you consider your closest peer in the market, and how do you how are you different from them? Why hasn't anyone else developed this successful story before?
So I don't think we have peers. And let me explain, because the best option you have, right? The best option aside from uranium.io. It's probably, I think the best option is uranium.io, just to put it out there. But most people are still going to be using Sprott. But I wouldn't say Sprott is a peer, because obviously they have billions and billions. So, they're much bigger. I would aspire for Sprott to be a peer. We have lots of ways to go. But then on the blockchain side, there's nothing. There was a project at one point, but then it was kind of like a weird mine off-tech, and then they slapped an NFT, and I think they're trying to do something again, but they're not live, and it's an idea. It's not a concrete thing. So right now, we sit. Your options are basically either go to Cameco and then trade in $4 million increments, be very, very big, or use maybe the Yellow Cake Fund in the UK, or the Sprott ETF, or use uranium.io. So very different things.
Yeah, definitely, and it's much easier when you have industry giants at this, like Cameco and Curzon. What do you feel about the market needs for more education on this topic? Do you believe that we need really more education? And what are maybe the most frequently asked questions that you get about uranium.io?
Yeah, I think on our end, the most education we need to make is less about uranium and more about like why it makes sense to have uranium on chain, because there's already like people are already owning and buying billions and billions of dollars of uranium in the form of ETFs or funds. So the first target should be the people who already hold uranium. They've already been convinced that uranium is a worthwhile asset class, and convince them to hold it in a different form potentially. Or people who are already interested in uranium but don't have access to this. So rather than focus on uranium education specifically, which we do a little bit of, I would focus more on like why is it okay to have it on chain, giving transparency in the structure so that people can get comfortable with the legal setup behind it, with understanding why this token in a portfolio actually gives them rights to a beneficial ownership of uranium. That's important to understand. So probably education on that side, on like tokenization itself.
Okay. Let's bring this to practical view. How can people buy XU308, the tokenized uranium? Is it as easy as going to uranium.io, or?
There's a few steps after that, but it is not much harder than that. So you can buy it on Archax directly if you have an account with Archax, and you can also, if you have a crypto wallet, you can also go to uranium.io and buy it with a stable coin and a crypto wallet. So how easy it is depends on how experienced you are with using blockchains. If you've done it often, if you've used this type of tools before, then it's very easy. If it's new, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And of course, we're looking for more venues as well to offer the token.
Okay, I want to hear more about the potential future developments. So what can we expect from the uranium.io?
I think more venues and more support from custodian is an important step. The goal being to make it available to many more people and have broader distribution. That's number one. And then number two, more products and more commodities.
Okay. Arthur, are there any other commodities that you're excited and interested in?
Yes, I think lithium is interesting and cobalt is interesting as well.
Any other?
A few more, but thinking more about them. I think if we were to move next, it would probably be those two.
Okay. Where can people find the information about what you're building?
On uranium.io, and that's we have a news section, and you can also follow the uranium.io uranium_io handle on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitter. Also, I speak about a lot of different things, not necessarily just uranium. So probably the uranium.io handle is the one to follow.
Okay. Final note, what is the most important thing that you want our viewers to take away from this conversation?
That just because it's on a blockchain doesn't necessarily mean it's a crypto product. And that if you're interested in uranium, like a blockchain is a really good Rails solution for holding it and transferring it and trading it.
That was Arthur Breitman, co-founder of Tezos. Arthur, thank you for coming to my show. You explained a lot. I believe that viewers get a better picture of this. Thank you once again, and I wish you luck.
Thank you very much.